Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dokkan Battle video, and today we are doing a follow-up to my top 10 worst EZAs in Dokkan history video. That video has done really well, so I figured let's give you guys some more of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the flip of that. We're going to do the top 10 best EZAs in Dokkan history. Now, I found this list way harder to do than the worst EZAs. I'd say when I was coming up with my list for worst EZAs, it was really easy for me to pick out maybe like 12 to 13 units, and then I was able to kind of whittle it down from there. When we talk about best EZAs, there's been a ton of like incredibly good EZAs in Dokkan history and units that have been very, very good after their EZA, right? So the reason why this is difficult is because there's so many very good units that we could be talking about. So I've decided to kind of quantify this or break this up in a different way. So let me kind of explain the rules for how I decided my top 10 EZA before you guys all jump the gun and be like, why isn't this unit here? Why isn't this unit here? Things like that. And I am going to talk about some honorable mentions right away just to get some unit names out there that I know you guys are going to be expecting to see on the list that maybe wouldn't be on my list for various reasons. So just like the previous video, we are going to limit this to Dokkan Fests and summonable LRs. So Dokkan Fest TURs, Dokkan Fest LRs, Carnival LRs. Well, and the Carnival LRs won't be on here because none of them have EZA'd, but in the future they would qualify. And then Yellow Coin LRs, right? So any basically summonable type of LR or Dokkan Fest unit is what qualifies for the list. So if you have a unit in mind, but they're like a banner unit or free to play, they just won't be on this list because of that. So that's one way to cut a bunch of units out, right? The other way I'm going to kind of quantify this isn't necessarily the units that after their EZA are the better units in the game, right? It's not just how good the unit is after the EZA. Think of it as like a top 10 most improved units from EZA. Like these are units that their EZA took a unit from like trash, unusable, terrible unit to actually like quite amazing and runnable units. Okay, so a unit that was worse on release that got a really good EZA is going to push themselves up on my list. Okay, that's the way I'm really trying to quantify this. So let me start off with some like honorable mentions and like some examples and explain maybe why these units didn't make it onto my top 10. And I picked a lot more modern units because these are units that you guys will be looking for, but my top 10 list will be throughout Dokkan history. There'll be some really old units, there will be some newer ones, things like that. So I'm going to start with AGL UI Goku because this is a guy that when we think of really good EZAs is really up there, right? He's like right now in the game probably like a top 3 unit in the game. But the reason why he didn't make it into my top 10 list is because on release, he was already really amazing and he was one of the better aging units in the game because of his dodge ability, right? But his current EZA is incredible. He got actually 7% more on his 70%, so he's 77% chance to dodge. He gets guaranteed dodge the first turn. He gets 2 ki instead of 1 every time he dodges. He does way more damage, right? Like he's incredible. He's amazing. So he did get a lot of really great improvements and is an incredible unit, but because he was so good on release, he didn't make my top 10 EZAs in Dokkan history because I'm looking on most improvement and maybe most like, and a combination of like impact on the meta. This guy, I would say, because of his impact on the meta, is actually like really close to making the list though, even though he was so good. Like the fact that this guy could make my top 10 list being how good he was on release is actually pretty incredible because the units, once again, that are going to mainly be on my list are ones that were really usually pretty bad or they like phased out very quickly after release, whereas this guy's been really great. So yes, I want to throw this guy out as an honorable mention because I know he's an incredible EZA, right? Another unit, these guys, really great EZA. Once again, though, they were actually like pretty good on release and people use them a lot. But yeah, I just want to throw them out as an honorable mention because they are a very, very good EZA, but they're maybe not as meta impactful as say like UI Goku, right? Like UI Goku's crazy. I want to throw this guy out as an honorable mention because I do think they got a really great EZA. Being that this unit is grounded in damage reduction, I kind of knew their EZA was going to be very good. The reason why they didn't make my top 10 is because I think they were actually pretty good on release. I actually think they were a bit underrated. They already had that built-in damage reduction, and they had it at a time where like a lot of Dokkan Fest, like damage reduction was pretty rare back when they got it, right? It was like just those, like that pod of like 3 golden Frieza units that had it, 2 or 3 golden Frieza units that had it, but this guy having damage reduction when they came out was very good, and I would say they were actually a pretty good unit. I think what held this unit back back when they first came out was maybe the Buu team wasn't as top tier meta as it is now, right? Because I remember back then, like when this guy was relevant, like you were running like the banner unit physical Fat Buu was like that, and like the tech buff Buu was like one of the better units. So like overall, the Buu team wasn't as in good of a place as it is now, which is why we maybe don't remember using this guy as much back then. But I think they actually were like, they had a very good kit initially. So that's why I didn't maybe give them top 10 EZA, because top 10 EZA is like, let's really blow up that kit and change them a lot and make them really good, right? Also, physical Gotenks. The reason why he won't be on my top 10 is because he was too good on release. He was a worldwide celebration unit, so obviously he's going to be really good. But I want to throw him out because he's going to be a unit that people are currently thinking about as an incredible EZA that is beating top tier content in the game right now, right? Broly, Chilai, and Lemo, same thing. The reason why they're not on my top 10 is because the best part about their kit is the guaranteed dodge with 7 orbs, which is basically unchanged after their EZA, right? Honestly, Broly, Chilai, and Lemo, what held them back on release was they didn't have teams. Like, they're so limited on the teams. They didn't actually have, like, a good proper place to run them. If we look at it, I think on release, these guys only had movie bosses and joint forces. That's it. That's all they had. So joint forces for the longest time didn't even have a proper leader skill. So in reality, they had like one team, which was movie bosses. And if movie bosses wasn't relevant, you just flat out couldn't run them. So them being held back early on wasn't because of their kit. It was because you couldn't put them on a team. So their EZA did help them a lot because they got a lot of improvements. But what really improved them was when they got their EZA, they had 3 more categories and very relevant leaders to run them on. That's actually what made them better, was like the teams and the leaders, not so much the EZA. So that's why they didn't make my top 10, but I want to throw them out because they're a very relevant EZA unit that people are using. And then I want to throw out Yamcha. So obviously he can't make my list because he's a free-to-play unit, but this is the type of unit that if this were summonable probably would be on my top 10, because this is a unit that literally went from a nothing garbage on release unit to an actually pretty darn good unit you can use. Now he's limited to Dragon Ball Saga mainly, maybe Earthbred fighters you could use him a little bit, but like, dude, this dude's chucking out 25 to 30 mil attack stats with some dodge built in. Like, he's actually like really good, whereas his old kit was just like, he was nothing. Like, he just did nothing. So I want to throw him out as an honorable mention just because I'm a fan of him, but he can't qualify for my list because he is a free-to-play unit. All right, so with that, let's jump into the actual list. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want to spoil it because I have to go to a different screen here. So let me just go into this. We'll just black out for a minute here, and I'm going to go to my screen. Now, one thing I will say is these won't be in any particular order. Okay, what I'll do, this will be like the last one. We'll jump onto the screen here again. So we're going to start with this unit right here. So this is my top 10. This will not be in any particular order, but I will talk about some. I do have some units in mind in certain placements, so I will talk about those. But you can feel free to maybe decide what order you think these units should be in. And obviously in the comments, let me know if there's units you think that should be on the list that you didn't see. So we're going to talk about Physical God Vegito. Here is one of the best EZAs in Dokkan history. And the reason why I put this guy here is this guy was a unit that was good on release. But this guy was so old that, like, back then, it was like all of the units were very similar. But having the counter mechanic was always very good with this guy. But this guy's EZA, I remember, was just so incredible, so impactful. This guy, the reason why this guy's on the list, because he was like a meta-changing unit after EZA. After EZA, this guy was, like, without a doubt, the best unit in the game. And it was by a mile, and it was for a very long time. This guy, because of all of his counters, because typically Dokkan is afraid of counter units and gave them like pretty underwhelming EZAs. So like AGL Vegito would be like an example one. But this guy, they actually gave like a pretty darn good EZA. And him getting attack on super, like, I just remember this guy would counter, do a couple of supers, build up his attack more, and get a bunch of counters. Like, this dude could output so much more damage than everything in the game. It was crazy. He had the damage reduction on normals. So this guy is on my list. Once again, I'm not sure exactly where I'm placing him right now, but he's definitely in my top 10 because he was just so meta impactful for such a long time after his EZA. And by the way, this guy's super EZA is going to be incredible. And that's another thing I should mention, is my list does not include super EZAs. This is just regular EZA. Super EZA is too new. I don't want not include them because like all of those units got incredible. Like every super easy has been incredible, and the whole list would just be like all of the super easies plus a few of these. So my list will not include those, right? But physical super Vegito, Vegito Blue, just incredible unit. Physical Vegito Blue. All right, in Janemba, same thing. This is a unit. Just him having guaranteed guard, like the defense, and then the amount of defense that he had. This dude was crazy on his EZA. He shot up to one of the best units in the game, and this dude was just like a defensive cheat code. Like, you could not die with Inchanemba. I remember this guy was so incredibly good after his initial EZA. And once again, this is a guy I'm maybe looking to super EZA during Worldwide if they do movies like I think they might be. I'm thinking like Gogeta, Janemba could be, like they're due for new summonable units. So like I think this dude with super EZA is going to be absolutely insane. Now the flip side of that, I do want to talk about STR Super Janemba because people brought him up in the comments for worst EZA of all time. And I do think there's some argument for that. So the thing with STR Super Janemba, he EZA'd like what, maybe like a year after this guy, something like that, maybe even longer than that. And this is how good Janemba was, by the way. STR Super Janemba got his EZA, and he was basically the exact same unit as Janemba, and he EZA'd way later, and he was still very good when he EZA'd, right? So the argument for Super STR Janemba to be on worst EZA list is that his EZA actually was pretty underwhelming because he shouldn't have been the same as a unit that came out so long before him. But the issue was Janemba was so overpowered, so ahead of his time on his EZA. Janemba definitely would be in my top 5 probably. Like he's up there. He got such an incredibly good EZA and very, very meta impactful throughout his stint in Dokkan with his EZA. And I'm looking for Super EZA to really rejuvenate this guy. Very, very good unit, right? And one of the best stickers in the game. That's a plus there, right? All right. We have to talk about my boy Techhit. Now, this guy is one like, sure, after his EZA, he's not like as meta impactful as like say UI Goku, right? Who wasn't even on the list. But the reason Techhit gets on here, this guy was one of the worst global first releases or just flat out Dokkan Fest releases in Dokkan history. I would say this guy is probably like right behind Physical Raditz is just like one of the worst dead on released units in Dokkan history when he released. Now the thing with Techhit, on release, he wasn't as bad as he ended up being because the meta, he was fine. But the problem with Techhit was the meta shifted immediately, like almost instantly after he came out. And he like literally just got blown up by every event. This dude had like no defense, right? So and the other thing with Techhit is he was grounded a lot in stunning, which as we all know, stunning is like useless in most hard content in the game. He was basically relegated to a super battle road only unit. So this is just a dead on arrival unit, extremely disappointing because he was a global first release. If you guys all remember Merry Hitmas, he was like a Christmas global first. And he was just god-awful. And Hit was actually a unit we voted for. Because they did a vote. And it was Kale, Cauliflower, Hit. We got the vote on any of those 3. And Hit was what we voted for. And this was the trash they gave us, right? So the reason why this guy makes my top 10 best EZA list is this guy actually got an incredibly good, helpful EZA for what he was. He actually became quite good and quite runnable. He was actually the choice Universal Survival Saga lead, and Universal Survival Saga was very good at the time. So yeah, Techhit just went from 0 to hero like instantly with this EZA, and because of the amount of improvement he got, it's why he's on my list. I know you guys won't think of Techhit and regard him as like one of the best units in Dokkan history, but dude, you have to agree, this guy got one of the best improvements in Dokkan history, right? Just an insane amount of improvement on his EZA. He was like nothing and then became fantastic actually. So that's why Techhit makes my list. Physical Future Gohan. This is a unit that made my list because on EZA, like when we were going through that kind of the first round of EZAs for like this type of leader skill, right? For the type of leader skill, so this was like the 170 leads, like first getting their EZAs. This guy was the best of the batch by far because of the built-in damage reduction, which he already had, but his EZA improved it to the point where this guy was actually like the best TUR EZA for quite a while. I want to say for like a year. this guy was regarded as the best EZA TUR in the game, because as we know, Dokkan went through a stint of some pretty bad EZAs, or like just mediocre one. Like they kind of had this attitude that they didn't want EZAs to be too powerful. Well, this is the guy that kind of broke the rule and was a very, very exceptional EZA. And I remember this guy when, if you guys remember Int, Dokkan Fest, LR, Trunks, and Vegeta, like them dropping and then like pairing with this guy was such a good combo, right? So yeah, this guy I think was very, very good. He's obviously like pretty much phased out by now, but now he was kind of replaced by Int Future Gohan, and I think some people are still using Int Future Gohan and sneaking around with him. And then obviously we have the Carnival LR Future Gohan. So this guy's definitely had his time, but once again, the era at which this guy EZA'd, he reigned supreme for quite a while. So that is why I put him on my list. All right, then we have STR Super Buu, right? Now, yeah, I think this guy did get an incredibly good EZA, and I've talked about this guy a few times on my channel. What really held this guy back was that the timing of his EZA was poor, right? Like, we'll all agree on that. Like, the timing was really bad because Buu wasn't ready for it. I wish he had gotten his EZA, like, during Golden Week, like, right? Like, around that time, because that's when Buu Saga really got the buffs. But I'm looking at this guy just in the scope of, like, on release, this guy was one of the worst Dokkan Fest releases of the year he released in. I remember he came out and just nobody cared, nobody used him. Like, look at this. Look at, I'll just show you guys something here. Let me go into, here, let me go into the growth tab. I'll show you, like, look at his original kit. Like, yeah, like his passive is just so basic, right? Like just some basic stats. And he does have all of the absorptions, but his EZA, he got a lot of improvement. His base form still isn't the craziest, but like when he transforms, right? His Buuhan and his Buu Piccolo forms are actually quite good. And those are the ones that you're going to get most often. And once again, it's relative to when he EZA'd. I think this guy actually had a very incredible EZA for when he released. It's just if you try using him now, the power creep is way too high to actually use him, right? But this is an example more of that. I feel like this was a very much like a dead on arrival unit that just never really had a place in the game. And then his EZA made him a lot better. Like this guy's definitely here for like most improvement from EZA. He's a tough one. He's one that, you know, like if you wanted to like replace a unit on my list, this is maybe the one you would take off only because of the weird timing of his EZA kind of held him back a little bit, right? And so like if you like some of the units on my honorable mentions, this would probably be the one I'd swap out. But I just felt kind of strong that like this guy did get a lot of improvement on EZA, so I wanted to put him here for that. All right, dude, STR Kefla. I think STR Kefla would be second or third on my list for best EZA in Dokkan history. Kefla is the combination of, she was actually pretty bad on release. And I remember I'm somebody that coped for Kefla because I really like Universe 6. And I summoned for her, even though it was highly recommended not to. I think she was like in that Raditz slot that was right before Worldwide Download Celebration after Anniversary. So she was that slot that you definitely did not want to summon. And I did anyways because I like Universe 6. But she was one of the easiest skips in Dokkan history because she wasn't great on release. Universe 6 wasn't the craziest. I mean, you had LR, Kel, and Kefla who were actually, I think that was during their reign of being really amazing still. But there was just no reason to summon for her because you just got done with the Anniversary and you had Worldwide coming up, right? And she actually wasn't that great on release. Like, I'm willing to admit that, even though I was coping for her pretty bad. But dude, it's the combination that she wasn't good on release, and then so she got a ton of improvement, like really improved, and she's actually like very meta relevant and is like an insane unit, and currently in the game, one of the best EZAs in the game currently. Just insane. Like this character Kefla, I think for me personally, and being I'm veteran, have like pretty much every unit in the game, she's the first character I ever did 100 million damage, over 100 million damage in attack stat in a single turn. She was the first unit I was ever able to do that, and she couples that with 70% chance to dodge. Like, She's crazy. She has everything. She's got the offense. She has the defensive tech. She's insane, and she's very, very usable right now. She's one of the best units you can use in very hard content. It's just that, you know, when her dodge doesn't proc, she's probably going to die. But that's what a lot of the units in the game are right now, right? Dodge or die. But she's got the damage to back it. And I think in this meta, offense is a good defense, because if you can peel through the enemies quick enough, then they don't have as many chances to super you and kill you. So Kefla is a unit that helps you peel through content quickly because she does such overwhelming damage. So I think a lot of people would agree with her on my top 10. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback on this one. I think Kefla is very well deserving, and I think she's either 2 or 3 for me. But I think I'm going to slot her comfortably in number 2 best EZA in Dokkan history. Oh shoot! Did not mean to press that. You guys didn't even see that. Back this way. All right, and then I'm gonna go Gotenks. Kefla ranks, like Gotenks and Kefla, we all know are pretty much the same unit. So I had to put Gotenks here because he got just as impressive as an EZA. I wouldn't rank him as high as Kefla, simply because he was actually a lot better on release than Kefla was. And that's really all there is to it. But Gotenks, very, very good unit. He would slot, you know, probably somewhere in the middle on this list. But incredible EZA. Not much to say because he's pretty much the same as Kefla, right? And his transformation's a little bit harder. All right, Evolution Blue Vegeta we have to put here. Now you might say, well, Joe, you put UI Goku on the honorable mentions. Wouldn't Evolution Blue Vegeta fit in the same spot? He doesn't quite fit there. I think he does make it into my top 10. And the reason why I put Vegeta in the top 10, one, I actually think he is the slightly better unit than UI Goku right now. I don't know. It's close, man, because Goku's like got the dodge or die type of mentality, but his dodge is so much more reliable than any other dodge or die unit in the game. But Vegeta he's just such a solid rock, because when you've got just this built-in damage reduction, you can just eat the hits. You don't have to rely on the RNG to let you dodge. So even UI Goku, if he builds up to like 84% chance to dodge, he can still get hit, right? Vegeta just so reliable. It's not often that he dies, and if he does die, he probably has his revive up, which UI Goku has the revive going for him as well. But the reason why Evolution Blue Vegeta sneaks onto the list while UI doesn't, as I mentioned before, UI Goku was just a dominant force in the game for a long time and aged so well because of the 70% chance to dodge. Whereas Vegeta, while he was very good on release, UI Goku was clearly the better unit on release. And Evolution Blue Vegeta actually aged out kind of quick, because while he had damage reduction, it was so minuscule, and he had to like get hit to build up. Like he had to get hit a bunch just to build up the 30%. And as we know, 30% isn't that good of damage reduction unless you've got insane amounts of defense, which this guy did not have. Now what they've done was they've given this guy immediate, like, good amount of damage reduction, much better defense, and can build up to unkillable amounts of damage reduction while doing a ton of damage. And the one thing that Evolution Blue Vegeta and UI Goku have, they both have the insane guaranteed crit on 24 ki, which is crazy. And then they're guaranteed critting the rest of the turn. What they've always had that was always insane was 50% chance to crit, and then every subsequent attack would be 100% chance to crit. So these units are both good. And if you're someone watching and you're mad that he's here and UI Goku isn't, we can just call them a tie, right? If you want to put them on my top 10 list as a tie, feel free to do that. But the reason, once again, Vegeta just wasn't as good on release and did not age well like UI Goku. So he got more improvement that way. And the improvement on his damage reduction, I think, outweighs the improvement on UI Goku's dodge, because 70% baseline dodge that he already had that's meta relevant. Like, that's already good enough. So everything he got was just extra gravy. Whereas this guy did not have enough damage reduction, and the EZA gave him the necessary damage reduction he needed, which is why he's on my list. And I would rank Vegeta quite high because he is a super uber mega relevant top tier, like top 3 unit in the game type of meta relevant unit for EZA, right? All right, next one on my list. We've got 17 in Golden Frieza. And this is my pick for number 1. Like, this, to me, hands down, number 1, best EZA in Dokkan history. The combination of how insanely dominant, they're like unkillable, dude. They're crazy right now. And this was like one of the most dead releases in Dokkan history. Like, the combination, remember, this guy was part of probably like one of the worst anniversary part 2s ever in Dokkan history. because it was this guy in Team Universe 7, and the Reps of U7 team was pretty much like the Universal Survival Saga team. Like, they were full. Like, there was not room for either of them, and neither of them were really good enough to warrant putting on the team. Maybe Team Universe 7, but definitely not these guys. They were just terrible, just dead, like nothing. Like, let's look at them, right? Let's look at their initial kit. Like, that's it. Like, it's just that little teeny bit there. So their thing was built on doing a bunch of additionals, right? So they build up, dude, attack and defense 7% up to 70. They had to attack 10 times to build up that minuscule 70% buff, right? And then it's like, okay, they get a little bit of crit and they get damage reduction. But dude, 7% damage reduction for each attack performed. So you attack, what, 2 to 3 times and get 14 to 21% damage reduction with clearly not enough defense, and they're not doing like any damage. Like, they are just such a nothing unit, like terrible. But let's look at them now. Let's look at them now, right? Look at that giant, look at that paragraph. It's like 2 to 3 times bigger than what they had. Way more stats. Baseline 50% damage reduction, building up 17% more with each attack performed. So they attack twice, and they're at 84% damage reduction for attacking twice. 84% damage reduction. And they've got all of that other stuff on top of it. Dude, they're crazy. Insane. Not even including, like, you know, they have an active skill, gives them guaranteed crits, a ton of buffs. Like, dude, this guy's crazy. And the best thing about them is they have, like, no condition. So any team they slot on, they're going to be this unit on any team. They don't require any type of categories or any other units being on rotation. Like, they are just them from turn 1, and they're incredible, right? So by far the best in history, because once again, these guys have both ends of kind of my requirements, right? They were a dead nothing unit on arrival, and then the EZA made them relevant. But then on the other spectrum, they are a hugely meta impactful relevant unit, making, like, this is a unit that helps make Reps of U7 one, not just like a viable team, but actually like a top tier meta competitive team. Like, absolutely insane, these guys. And I've got one more unit on my list, and it's going to be this one. The Team Universe 7 right there with them. So the way I think I'm ranking top 3 is, I think Frieza 17 is number 1. I think Kefla is number 2. And I think these guys are number 3. These guys are really close. All 3 of them just incredibly impactful. Now, the reason why I did not rank these guys maybe as high as 17 in Frieza is because these guys were slightly less dead on arrival. Their kit was much better on release, but they were highly restrictive in that they had to be on like a Reps of U7 team. But these guys, I remember, were runnable, and they actually were pretty dang good if you did full Reps of U7. Whereas the other unit, just, you didn't even want to touch them. It's most players never use this guy on release because it was, once again, not worth summoning on, because the team was done. You didn't need them. Why sink your stones into a yellow coin banner where both of the units, like this guy was, I guess you could say, maybe okay to solid on release, but the other unit was god-awful terrible. And we know how bad those yellow coin banners were back in the day. So this was just clearly a luxury unit, and he wasn't needed for the team and not good enough to be like a must summon that you needed to have on the team. Whereas now, they're looking really spicy, really good, and Reps of U7's in a great place, so they're going to be just cooking and incredibly incredible, right? Once again, we can do the same thing. Let's look at their kit. This is what they originally had, okay? So a little chunk of a paragraph there, right? But they had literally had to have like 5 Reps of U7, so you could have like one slot that wasn't. But they were like, you know, okay-ish, whatever. We look at their kit now. I mean, they're looking, well, let me get their actual kit up now. I mean, look at that. Look at what they got. Like, I don't even have to read what it does. Just, they went from like a children's book to like a Bible is what they went from. So, absolutely incredible unit here. And I'm so excited. I'm going to do some runs with Reps of U7. But this is, once again, the same combo as the last one, where not being great on release to getting a huge improvement to actually being a very meta relevant, impactful unit. Really, really good. So let's kind of review the list again. So this is my list here. This is what I went with for my top 10. So I'm going to say, let's try to maybe put them in order because some people will want to do that. So I've got these guys at number 1. I think Frieza, 17, number 1. I think number 2 is Kefla because she just got such an improvement and she's so good, so meta relevant. And I think number 3, I'm going to slot this guy right here. Okay. After that, I think it gets a little bit muddy because there's a lot of ways that we could respond to most of these units. So I don't know that I'm going to put the rest in order because it's like, yeah, obviously this guy's incredible, but then I could also say, well, Techhit got way more of an improvement than him, right? It gets muddy and it's really hard to quantify there, but I do feel really good about my top 3 being those just because those kind of have all of the marks of being very bad on release and then being like top tier meta relevant after release, right? And then once again, these are some of my honorable mentions I want to bring up just because they got incredible EZAs, right? It's just they maybe didn't get as much improvement as some of the other units, right? So anyways, definitely hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. I know you guys are going to have some units in mind that maybe you feel like should be on the list. Definitely hit me up and let me know. I love the discussion. If you want to hop into my Discord, if you're just someone that wants to talk about Dokkan, we have a pretty active Dokkan community in there. Or if you want help with the game, we have team building help and things like that. So my Discord is posted in the description of all my videos. Let me know what y'all think. I want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.